My sister kept telling everyone my husband was secretly in love with her. She had a meltdown when I proved her wrong. It all started when my sister Chloe kept saying weird stuff about my husband Ryan. Not subtle stuff either. She'd literally tell people at family dinners that Ryan was obviously in love with her. The evidence? He helped her move a couch once. He fixed her laptop when it crashed. He jumped her car battery that one time in the parking lot. Normal stuff any decent person would do for their sister-in-law. But Chloe turned it into some romantic fantasy. Did you see how fast Ryan came when I called about my car? She'd say at dinner. He dropped everything. My mom would look uncomfortable. My dad would clear his throat. I'd sit there trying not to throw my fork at her. He's my husband, Chloe. He's being nice. Nice? Please. Men don't do that much for women they're not interested in. He does that much for me because I'm his wife. But he does it for me too, she'd say with this little smile. What does that tell you? It tells me you're delusional. She'd laugh. You're so naive. Ryan would text me asking if I needed anything from the store and she'd lean over to look. See? He's thinking about coming here. He wants an excuse to see me. That's my grocery list, Chloe. He's asking if I need milk. She kept escalating it. When Ryan helped her install a ceiling fan because her landlord wouldn't, she posted about it. So blessed to have someone who drops everything for me. When people asked who, she'd be coy about it. Someone special. My friends started asking me questions. Your sister posts about Ryan a lot. Is everything okay? Everything was not okay. I tried talking to Ryan about it and he was oblivious. She's just joking around, he said. She's not joking. She told my cousin you have feelings for her. He looked genuinely shocked. What? Why would she say that? Because you keep helping her with stuff. So, she's your sister. I'd be a jerk if I didn't help. That's when I got the idea. What if you were a jerk? What if you stopped helping completely? He didn't want to at first. But after Chloe told his brother that there was definitely chemistry between them, he agreed. The next time Chloe called about her Wi-Fi not working, Ryan said he was busy. She called me immediately. Ryan won't come fix my internet. Okay? He always fixes my tech stuff. Not anymore. 2 days later, she called him about moving furniture. He said no. She showed up at our house. What's wrong with Ryan, she asked. Nothing's wrong with him. He won't help me with anything anymore. He's being so cold. Interesting. When a man stops dropping everything for you, you notice, huh? She got defensive. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. You said men only help women they're interested in. Ryan's not helping you? What does that tell you? She tried another angle at the next family dinner. Ryan's been so mean to me lately, she announced to everyone. Won't even help me move one tiny bookshelf. My uncle laughed. Why would Ryan move your furniture? He's not your husband, but he always helps me. He's so good at that stuff. My aunt chimed in. Maybe he's busy with his own house. Chloe looked frustrated. He's not too busy. He helped his coworker fix her fence last week. I jumped in. Yeah, Tim asked him to help his wife with that. Tim couldn't do it because of his back surgery. So he helps other women, just not me, Chloe said. He helps people when their actual partners can't. You're single, Chloe. You don't have a partner whose husband needs to step in. She was getting red. This is about what I said before, isn't it? About what you've been saying for months? That my husband is in love with you? Yeah, that. Everyone at the table got quiet. My mom finally spoke. Chloe, you've been saying that? It was just a joke. Really? Because you told my hairdresser he was going to leave me for you eventually. You told our cousin that he texts you constantly. He's never texted you first in his life. Chloe looked around the table for support but found none. My dad shook his head. That's inappropriate, Chloe. She tried one more time. Fine, I was wrong. Can Ryan please just go back to normal? Normal meaning what? I asked. Helping you with everything while you tell people he wants you? She didn't answer. I thought that was the end until I found her Facebook announcement. I opened Facebook that night and there it was at the top of my feed. Chloe had posted 3 long paragraphs about taking a break from family events because certain people were making her feel unwelcome and unsafe. She didn't name me directly, but it was obvious. The post talked about being punished for having feelings and how some people can't handle it when others are more desirable than them. She wrote about toxic family members who put their own insecurity above the well-being of others. The post made it sound like she was the victim of some horrible mistreatment, instead of someone who spent months telling people my husband wanted her. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't missing something. Nope. She really posted this for everyone to see. My phone started going crazy within 20 minutes. The post already had 15 comments from people asking what happened and telling Chloe they supported her. Most of them were her friends who didn't know our family situation. They left messages about cutting off toxic people and protecting your peace. My phone buzzed with texts from my mom, my dad, Grayson, my aunt, my uncle. Everyone asking if I'd seen it. Everyone asking what we should do. My dad's text just said, call me now. My mom sent 3 messages in a row about how embarrassing this was. Grayson texted asking if Chloe had lost her mind. I stared at my phone as more notifications came in. This was really happening. Chloe took our private family issue and made it a public drama. I took screenshots immediately before she could delete anything. Captured the whole post and all the comments. Sent them to Ryan first, then to my parents, then to Grayson. I needed everyone to see exactly what she wrote before she changed her story. Ryan called me 30 seconds after I sent it. He wanted to comment right away and tell everyone the truth. I told him to wait. We needed to think about this carefully. If we just reacted without a plan, Chloe would twist it into more proof that we were attacking her. He didn't like waiting, but he agreed. I could hear how angry he was in his voice. This wasn't just about me anymore. Chloe was dragging his name through the mud too. Isabella texted me 5 minutes later. She'd seen the post and wanted to know what was going on. This seemed extreme even for Chloe, she wrote. I called her because this was too much to explain in texts. I told her everything. The months of comments about Ryan being in love with Chloe. The family dinner where it all came out. How Chloe had been telling people Ryan was going to leave me. Isabella kept saying, "Oh my God, and I can't believe this." She felt terrible that this had been happening and she didn't know. She asked why I didn't tell her sooner. I didn't have a good answer. I guess I kept hoping it would just stop on its own. That was stupid. It obviously wasn't going to stop. My mom called crying before I even finished talking to Isabella. I had to tell Isabella I'd call her back. My mom was upset about the Facebook post making our family look broken and messed up. She wanted to call Chloe right away and make her take it down. I told her that was a bad idea. If she called Chloe now, Chloe would just feel more like a victim. She'd say we were all ganging up on her and trying to silence her. That would make everything worse. My mom didn't want to just let the post sit there for everyone to see. I got that. It was horrible. But reacting emotionally was exactly what Chloe wanted. She posted it to get a reaction. We needed to be smarter than that. My mom finally agreed to wait, but I could tell it was killing her. I spent an hour writing my own Facebook post. I wanted to lay out the facts without attacking Chloe directly. I explained that my sister had been telling people my husband was in love with her for months, that she based this on normal helpful things like fixing her laptop and jumping her car, that we tried to address it privately as a family before it got to this point. I kept it calm and clear. Just the facts. I didn't call her names or say she was crazy. I just explained what actually happened. Ryan read it before I posted it and said it was good. He said it made me look reasonable and Chloe look ridiculous without me having to say that directly. I hit post and waited to see what would happen. The comments started coming in right away. People I went to high school with. Friends from work. Family friends who knew both of us. Most of them were supportive and said they couldn't believe Chloe had been doing this. A few said they'd noticed her posts about Ryan and thought they were weird, but didn't want to say anything. Then Nyla commented. She said she remembered Chloe telling her that Ryan was going to leave me eventually. She wrote that she thought it was strange at the time but didn't want to get involved in family stuff. Now she wished she'd said something to me. Seeing other people confirm Chloe's behavior made me feel less crazy. I wasn't imagining this or blowing it out of proportion. Other people saw it too. Chloe responded to my post 40 minutes later. Her comment said I was gaslighting her and rewriting history. She wrote that everyone saw how Ryan used to drop everything for her until I forced him to stop. She said my jealousy and insecurity were destroying the family, not her honesty about Ryan's feelings. The comment was long and detailed. She made it sound like Ryan stopping his help proved there was something between them that I was threatened by. She added that I couldn't handle the fact that Ryan cared about her, and that I was punishing both of them for having a connection. It was completely twisted. She took Ryan being nice to his sister-in-law and turned it into this whole romantic thing that didn't exist. Ryan commented on both posts after that. His comment was short and clear. He wrote that he had never had romantic feelings for Chloe, that he only helped her as family the same way he'd help any relative, that her claims about his feelings had made him deeply uncomfortable for months. He said he stopped helping because the situation became inappropriate when she kept telling people he was in love with her, not because I made him stop. He tagged both me and Chloe so everyone would see it. His comment got more likes than either of our posts. People started commenting under his saying they believed him and that Chloe needed to stop. A few people said they felt bad for him being put in this position. The whole thing exploded after Ryan commented. Extended family members started weighing in. Old friends from college joined the conversation. My uncle commented supporting us. My aunt did too. Some of Ryan's friends from work found the posts and commented. Most people were on our side, but a few distant relatives said we should handle family business privately. They wrote that airing this stuff on Facebook was shameful and made everyone look bad. One of my dad's cousins said we were all acting like children and needed to take this offline. I understood their point, but Chloe was the one who made it public first. We were just defending ourselves. Still, I started to regret posting anything. This was getting out of control and way more people were involved than I wanted. Chloe posted again the next morning. This time it was longer and more detailed. She wrote about how men don't always understand their own feelings and how society teaches them to suppress emotional truth. She said Ryan's discomfort around her lately was actually proof that he was conflicted about his attraction to her. She claimed I had manipulated him into denying the obvious chemistry between them, and that time would prove her right. She added that authentic connections can't be hidden forever, no matter how hard people try to bury them. The post had this fake deep tone like she was some relationship expert instead of my delusional sister. I read it 3 times trying to figure out if she actually believed this stuff, or if she was just trying to save face after everyone called her out. Ryan saw it and just shook his head. He didn't even want to respond anymore because what was the point? You can't reason with someone who twists everything to fit their fantasy. I screenshot it and sent it to my parents. My mom called immediately asking what we should do. Before I could answer, my dad commented on Chloe's post. I watched it appear in real time. He wrote that her behavior was unacceptable and that she needed professional help to deal with whatever was causing these delusions. He said she owed Ryan and me a genuine apology and that the family couldn't keep pretending this was normal. It was the first time he'd been this direct with her publicly. Other family members started liking his comment within minutes. My aunt added her own comment agreeing with him. A few of my dad's friends commented too, saying they were sorry we were dealing with this. Chloe didn't respond to any of them. She just kept posting other stuff like nothing had happened. Pictures of her coffee, a meme about fake people, a quote about staying strong when everyone turns against you. It was bizarre watching her act like my dad hadn't just publicly called out her behavior. Isabella texted me that afternoon. She said we needed to meet in person without Chloe to figure out how to handle this as a family. She suggested my parents' house so everyone could talk openly. I agreed and texted my mom asking if that was okay. She said yes immediately, and that she'd been thinking the same thing. We set it up for the next evening. My mom called my aunt and uncle. I texted Grayson. Everyone said they'd be there. Ryan asked if I wanted him to come, but I told him he didn't have to sit through a whole meeting about my sister's obsession with him. He said he'd come anyway for support. The next evening, we all gathered at my parents' house. My mom had made coffee and put out cookies like this was some normal family get-together instead of an intervention planning session. We sat around the living room and nobody knew how to start. Finally, my dad cleared his throat and said we needed to talk about what Chloe had been doing and saying. He asked if anyone else had heard her make inappropriate comments about Ryan. My uncle spoke up first. He said Chloe had asked him a few weeks ago if he thought Ryan seemed happier when she was around, versus when it was just me. He'd thought it was a weird question but didn't think much of it at the time. Now he realized she was testing the waters to see if anyone else saw what she claimed to see. My aunt said Chloe had asked her something even worse. She wanted to know how long she should wait before telling Ryan how she felt since he was clearly unhappy in his marriage. My aunt had shut that down immediately and told Chloe she was way out of line. But Chloe had just laughed it off like my aunt didn't understand. Grayson shared that Chloe had sent him a long text message about signs that someone is attracted to you even if they won't admit it. The whole message was clearly about Ryan. She'd listed things like making excuses to be around someone and doing favors without being asked. Grayson said he'd ignored the text because he didn't know what to say. Hearing everyone's stories made me realize how much worse this was than I'd thought. Chloe hadn't just been saying this stuff to me. She'd been working on multiple family members, probably trying to build support for her delusion, or at least plant seeds of doubt about my marriage. It was calculated in a way that made my skin crawl. My mom was crying quietly. She kept saying she didn't understand how Chloe got like this. My dad put his arm around her and said we needed to decide on clear boundaries and consequences. We talked for over an hour about what to do. Some people thought we should just ignore Chloe until she got bored and moved on. Others thought we needed to force her into therapy somehow. I said we couldn't force her to do anything, but we could control whether she was welcome at family events. Ryan agreed and said Chloe needed to understand there were real consequences for her behavior. We finally decided as a family that Chloe wouldn't be invited to any family events until she got therapy, and gave us a genuine apology. Not just to me and Ryan, but to everyone she'd involved in this mess. My mom struggled with this decision. She kept saying Chloe was still her daughter, and she didn't want to abandon her. My dad reminded her that setting boundaries wasn't abandonment. It was actually the most loving thing we could do because it might push Chloe to get help. My aunt said she'd support whatever we decided. My uncle said he thought it was fair. Grayson said it was past time for consequences. My dad volunteered to call Chloe and deliver the family's decision. He said he felt responsible for not shutting this down sooner when the comments first started. He should have been firmer with her months ago instead of just looking uncomfortable at dinner. My mom tried to argue that she should be the one to call, but my dad insisted. He wanted Chloe to hear it from him, so she'd know this was serious. We all stayed while he made the call. He put his phone on speaker so we could hear. Chloe answered on the third ring, sounding cheerful. My dad didn't waste time with small talk. He told her we'd had a family meeting and that everyone agreed her behavior toward Ryan was inappropriate and harmful. He said she wasn't welcome at family gatherings until she got professional help and apologized sincerely. Chloe's voice changed immediately. She started yelling that the family was choosing me over her. She said we were all going to feel terrible when Ryan eventually admitted the truth about his feelings. She called my dad a bad father for taking my side. She said my mom must be so proud of herself for raising one golden child and one scapegoat. My dad tried to interrupt, but she just kept screaming. She said none of us understood real love or authentic connection. She said Ryan was going to realize what he was missing and come to her eventually. Then she hung up on him mid-sentence. My mom burst into tears. She said she never expected it to get this bad. She'd thought Chloe was just going through something and would snap out of it. But hearing her scream like that made my mom realize how deep the delusion went. Ryan squeezed my hand. My aunt looked shocked. Grayson just shook his head. We all sat there for a minute, not knowing what to say. The next morning, I woke up to 17 text notifications. Chloe had posted again. This time it was a long message about toxic family dynamics and how she was scapegoated for telling uncomfortable truths. She didn't name anyone specifically, but it was obvious who she meant. She wrote about families that can't handle honesty and how they gang up on the person brave enough to speak reality. She said she was the victim of family abuse and that she was going no contact for her own mental health. She made it sound like we'd attacked her out of nowhere instead of responding to months of her inappropriate behavior. The post already had 20 comments from her friends who didn't know our family. They were all supportive messages about cutting off toxic relatives and choosing yourself. People wrote about how proud they were of her for setting boundaries. Someone said families that can't accept truth don't deserve access to you. Another person said she was brave for walking away from abuse. I wanted to comment so badly and set the record straight. I wanted to reply to every single person and tell them what Chloe had actually been doing. But I knew that was exactly what she wanted. She wanted me to engage so she could play victim even more. She wanted a public fight she could screenshot and show people as proof of my toxicity. So I did nothing. I just watched the comments pile up while my blood boiled. Isabella called me about an hour later after seeing everything unfold online. She told me I needed to document all of this properly. Not just screenshots, but a real timeline with dates and witnesses for everything Chloe had said and done. I asked why, and she said because this was escalating fast, and if it got worse, I'd need proof of the pattern. So I spent the next 3 hours at my kitchen table writing it all out. Every comment Chloe made at family dinners with the date and who was there. Every social media post with screenshots and timestamps. Every person she told about Ryan's supposed feelings with their names written down. The ceiling fan incident in March. The laptop repair in January. The car battery jump in the parking lot last November. By the time I finished, my hand hurt from writing, and I had 6 pages of single-spaced documentation. But Isabella was right. Having it all laid out like that made me feel less crazy and more in control. I could see the pattern clearly now, how it started small and grew bigger over 8 months. Ryan's brother called him the next morning asking what the hell was going on. He'd seen all the Facebook posts, and then Chloe had messaged him privately saying Ryan had been really mean to her lately for no reason. Ryan put the call on speaker so I could hear. His brother sounded confused and concerned, asking if there was trouble in our marriage or something. Ryan explained the whole situation from the beginning, how Chloe had been making comments for months about him being in love with her, how we'd tried to handle it privately, how it exploded at the family dinner. His brother went quiet for a long time. Then he said he had no idea any of this had been happening. He thought Chloe was just being dramatic about Ryan not helping her move furniture. He didn't know about all the other stuff, all the claims she'd been making to different people. He apologized for not taking it seriously when Chloe first mentioned chemistry between them. He said he thought she was joking around. That afternoon, I got messages from 2 of my friends. They both sent me screenshots of private messages Chloe had sent them over the past week. The messages made my stomach hurt. Chloe told one friend that I'd always been jealous of her since we were kids, and that I couldn't handle her being prettier and more fun. She told the other friend that my marriage was falling apart, and I was blaming her instead of facing the truth about Ryan's unhappiness. She said I'd been controlling and manipulative our whole lives, and that the family finally saw through me. She made herself sound like the victim of my lifelong abuse. Both friends said they were forwarding the messages because they seemed really off, and they wanted to know what was actually true. They said they'd known me long enough to think something didn't add up, but they wanted to hear my side. I sent both friends the timeline document I'd written along with screenshots of Chloe's most wild claims. The ones where she said Ryan was going to leave me for her. The ones where she talked about their special connection, and how he always dropped everything for her. The ones where she made normal, helpful actions sound like romantic gestures. My friends responded fast. One called me right away saying she was horrified and so sorry for even questioning what was happening. She said she had no idea Chloe had gotten this deep into whatever fantasy she was living in. The other friend texted that she felt sick reading through everything, and that Chloe clearly needed professional help. They both apologized for not reaching out sooner when they'd noticed Chloe's weird posts about Ryan over the past months. They said they'd thought it was just sister rivalry stuff, not a full breakdown. A week went by after the family meeting where we decided on boundaries. My mom called me crying one afternoon. She said Chloe hadn't answered any of her calls or texts since my dad delivered the family's decision. She'd tried every day, sometimes twice a day, leaving voicemails saying she loved Chloe and wanted to talk. Nothing. My mom was worried but also frustrated because Chloe was the one who created this whole mess, and now she wouldn't even engage with attempts to fix it. She kept saying she didn't know what to do. Should she drive to Chloe's apartment? Should she keep calling? Should she give Chloe space? I told her I didn't know either, but that Chloe was an adult making her own choices about how to handle consequences. Ryan and I went out to dinner that Saturday trying to decompress from everything. We picked this Italian place across town where we figured we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. Wrong. We were halfway through our pasta when a woman approached our table looking nervous. She said she recognized us from Facebook and that she worked with Chloe. My stomach dropped. She said she didn't want to intrude, but she'd seen all the posts, and she wanted us to know that Chloe had been talking at work about her family turning on her. Several of her coworkers thought the situation sounded really concerning based on how Chloe described it. The woman seemed uncomfortable, like she wasn't sure if she should be telling us this. Ryan thanked her and she started to walk away, but then came back. She said she needed to tell me something else privately. Ryan said it was okay. she could say whatever in front of him. The woman sat down at our table for a minute. She said she was genuinely worried about Chloe's mental state. Chloe had been obsessing over this family situation at work, bringing it up constantly, getting upset at her desk, and her job performance was really suffering. Her boss had talked to her twice already about staying focused. The woman asked if Chloe had always been like this, or if something had triggered this behavior recently. She said it seemed like more than just family drama. It seemed like something had broken in Chloe's thinking. I sat there trying to figure out how to answer that. The truth was, I didn't actually know if something had triggered all of this, or if it had been building slowly over time. I thought back through the past year, trying to remember when the comments about Ryan first started. Then it hit me. Chloe went through a really bad breakup about 8 months ago. Her boyfriend ended things out of nowhere, and she was devastated for weeks. Right after that was when she started making the first comments about Ryan, the small ones about him being so helpful and nice. I told the coworker about the breakup timeline, and she nodded like that made sense to her. After dinner, I called my mom and mentioned the breakup connection. She confirmed that Chloe had been really messed up when her ex ended things. She'd cried for days and kept saying she didn't understand what went wrong. My mom said maybe Chloe latched onto Ryan as some kind of safe fantasy because he was kind to her when she was hurting and he wasn't going anywhere. Maybe she needed to believe someone wanted her after feeling rejected. It was the first time any of us had considered that Chloe's obsession might be connected to her own pain, instead of just being about Ryan. My dad called the next day with an idea that made my mom uncomfortable. He thought we should try to get Chloe's ex-boyfriend's contact information and see if he'd noticed any concerning behavior before they broke up. My mom didn't want to involve him because it felt like crossing a line, and also because what if he said something that made Chloe look even worse? But my dad and I talked it through and agreed it might give us important context about whether Chloe's mental state had been declining before the Ryan situation, or if this was something new. We needed to understand what we were actually dealing with here. Grayson said he could reach out to the ex since they used to be friends before the breakup. He texted him that same night and got a response within an hour. The ex said he'd be willing to talk, and that he'd actually been worried about Chloe based on some things mutual friends had mentioned about her recent behavior. They set up a phone call for the next day, and Grayson put it on speaker so my parents and I could hear. The ex sounded uncomfortable at first, but then he started talking about the end of their relationship. He said Chloe became super paranoid and jealous in the last few months they were together. She accused him of being interested in every woman he talked to or even looked at. His coworker asked him a question at the office, and Chloe saw it happen when she stopped by to bring him lunch. She spent the next 2 days convinced he was having an affair with that coworker. He tried to reassure her, but it got worse. She started following him places to see if he was meeting other women. She went through his phone constantly looking for evidence that didn't exist. She'd wake him up in the middle of the night demanding to know who he was dreaming about. He finally ended things because he couldn't live like that anymore, and she completely fell apart. The ex said he felt terrible about how it ended, but he couldn't stay in a relationship where he was constantly being accused of things he wasn't doing. Grayson asked if Chloe had ever fixated on a specific person the way she was doing with Ryan. The ex said not exactly, but she did become convinced his brother was flirting with her at a family barbecue. His brother was just being friendly and polite, but Chloe interpreted every smile and casual comment as romantic interest. When the ex told her she was reading too much into normal behavior, she got mad and said he was jealous that his brother liked her. After we hung up with the ex, my mom sat there looking completely shocked. She kept saying she had no idea Chloe had been like that in her relationship. My dad pointed out that this wasn't just about Ryan anymore. This was clearly a pattern of Chloe seeing romantic interest where none existed, and getting paranoid about relationships in general. I felt this weird mix of vindication and concern, because on one hand, it proved I wasn't crazy for thinking Chloe's behavior was seriously wrong. But on the other hand, it meant my sister had real mental health problems that went way deeper than I'd realized. My mom finally admitted that Chloe needed professional help, and not just family intervention. She said we needed to approach this as a mental health crisis instead of just bad behavior. My dad agreed and said we should reach out one more time to offer support specifically for getting therapy, but make it clear the boundary still stood. My mom called Chloe that afternoon and left a long voicemail. She said we loved her and wanted to help her get the support she needed, but that the family boundary would stay in place until she was willing to work on these issues with a professional. She offered to help find a therapist and even pay for sessions if money was the problem. 2 hours later, Chloe sent a text to the family group chat. It said we were all going to regret abandoning her when she needed us most, and that we'd see how wrong we were about everything. My mom started crying again. My dad looked exhausted. I just felt numb at that point because nothing we did seemed to get through to her. 3 weeks went by with no contact from Chloe. Then Isabella called me one afternoon sounding really thrown off. She'd just seen Chloe at the grocery store and Chloe had pretended not to see her. Isabella said she walked right past her in the produce section, and Chloe looked directly at her and then looked away like they were strangers. Isabella said hello anyway because that's just weird to ignore someone you know, and Chloe walked away without responding. Isabella said it was completely unlike Chloe's normal friendly personality, and it genuinely freaked her out. A few days after that, my aunt called with more news. Chloe had shown up at her house unannounced, asking if she could stay there for a while. When my aunt asked what was going on, Chloe admitted she couldn't afford her rent anymore. My aunt asked what happened to her job, and Chloe got defensive, but eventually said she'd been written up twice for poor performance and would probably get fired soon. My aunt told her she could stay one night, but only if she agreed to follow the family's requirement about getting therapy and apologizing to Ryan and me. Chloe said she'd think about it. The next morning, my aunt woke up and Chloe was already gone. She'd left without saying goodbye or leaving a note. Later that day, Chloe posted on Facebook about family members who offer conditional love instead of real support. My aunt was hurt but also relieved because she didn't want to deal with Chloe's drama in her own house. Then I started hearing from mutual friends that Chloe had been telling people Ryan was texting her again. She apparently said he'd been apologizing for how he treated her, and that they were working things out. I felt my stomach drop when I heard that because it was such an obvious lie. I asked Ryan about it and he immediately pulled out his phone to show me. 0 texts to or from Chloe since the family dinner. 0 calls, 0 contact of any kind. He scrolled through everything to prove it and I believed him, but I was furious that Chloe was out there actively lying about contact that wasn't happening. Ryan looked really serious and said we might need to send her a formal cease and desist letter if she kept making false claims about him. I hated that it had come to this, but I agreed that we needed to protect ourselves if she was spreading lies that could damage his reputation. We started looking up lawyers who handled this kind of thing. Before we could actually draft anything, my mom called sounding panicked. Chloe had just contacted her asking for money because she got fired from her job. My mom asked her what her plan was, and Chloe said she needed money for rent and groceries until she found something new. My mom told her she'd be happy to help with therapy costs but not living expenses until Chloe addressed the family situation and got professional help. Chloe hung up on her without another word. My dad called me that evening and said he was going to Chloe's apartment the next morning to check on her no matter how mad we all were because someone needed to make sure she was okay. I told him to be careful and to call me if anything seemed really wrong. He showed up at her place around 10 and texted me immediately. Her apartment was a complete disaster. Dishes piled in the sink, trash overflowing, clothes everywhere. Chloe answered the door in pajamas that looked like she'd been wearing them for days and her hair was greasy and unwashed. My dad said she looked terrible and clearly hadn't been eating much based on how her clothes hung on her. He asked if he could come in, and she just stepped aside without saying anything. Once inside, he found empty takeout containers covering the coffee table, and the curtains were all closed, making the whole place dark and depressing. He sat down and asked her directly what was going on and if she was taking care of herself. Chloe started crying immediately. Not the defensive, angry crying from before, but this broken, exhausted crying that scared him. She admitted she knew Ryan didn't love her and probably never had. She said she couldn't stop herself from believing it because thinking someone cared about her felt better than facing the fact that she was completely alone after her breakup. She told my dad she'd ruined everything and didn't know how to take back all the things she'd said and done to our family. My dad held her while she cried and told her she needed immediate help and that we all still loved her, but she had to be willing to work on whatever was causing this. She kept saying she was so embarrassed and didn't know how things got so out of control. My dad called me from her apartment about 20 minutes later and asked if I'd be willing to talk to Chloe with him there to help keep things calm. I didn't want to at first because I was still so angry about everything she'd put us through, but then I heard Chloe crying in the background, and it wasn't the defensive anger she'd been showing for weeks. It was genuine distress and fear, and it made me realize she really was falling apart. I agreed to come over and got there within 30 minutes. The conversation was awful and awkward in every possible way. Chloe apologized, but then immediately started making excuses about how Ryan's kindness had confused her and made her think he had feelings for her. I cut her off and told her that her confusion didn't justify months of inappropriate comments about my husband, or the lies she told everyone about him texting her and wanting to leave me. I said I needed to see real actual change before I could even think about trusting her again. She nodded and kept crying and said she understood. My dad suggested therapy and Chloe agreed right away. She asked if we could keep it between us for now because she was so embarrassed about how out of control everything had gotten. I told her no. The whole family needed to know she was getting help, because they were all worried and waiting for her to take responsibility for what she'd done. She looked hurt, but agreed that made sense. My dad spent the next 2 days making phone calls and looking up therapists in our area who specialized in relationship issues and delusional thinking patterns. He found someone with good reviews who had an opening the following week. Chloe accepted the appointment and my dad offered to drive her there himself, which she agreed to with obvious relief on her face. The night before her first therapy session, Chloe posted a public apology on Facebook. It admitted she'd created a false narrative about Ryan, and that she was getting professional help to deal with some personal issues. It wasn't as detailed or specific as I would have liked because she didn't really explain what the false narrative was, or apologize directly to Ryan and me by name. But it was a start, and several people commented supportive messages about her taking accountability and getting help. Ryan read the apology the next morning while drinking his coffee. He told me he appreciated that she posted something public, but he wasn't ready to have any contact with her yet. I completely understood and told him to take whatever time he needed to feel comfortable. I said my relationship with Chloe going forward would be separate from his boundaries with her, and he didn't need to do anything he wasn't ready for. He seemed relieved that I wasn't going to push him to forgive her or interact with her before he was ready. Over the next month, Chloe kept going to therapy and sent me occasional text updates about what she was working on with her therapist. She said her therapist had diagnosed her with some anxiety and attachment issues that had gotten much worse after her breakup 8 months ago. Apparently, she'd developed this pattern of latching onto unavailable people as a way to avoid actually dealing with her fear of being alone. It explained her behavior, but definitely didn't excuse the months of inappropriate comments and lies about Ryan. I texted back short responses acknowledging her updates, but didn't engage in long conversations because I still needed space from her. My mom called me one afternoon sounding happier than she had in weeks. She said Chloe had gotten a new job at a different company and seemed to be doing much better overall. Chloe was attending therapy twice a week and hadn't made any inappropriate comments about Ryan or anyone else's relationships during their phone calls. My mom said Chloe was asking about family dinner plans and wondering when she might be welcome again, but wasn't pushing or demanding anything. 2 months passed and my mom called asking if I'd be okay with Chloe coming to a small family dinner at their house. I told her yes, but only if Ryan could skip it without any pressure or guilt from anyone. My mom agreed immediately and said she understood why he might not want to be there. I expected Ryan to take the out I'd given him, but when I told him about the dinner, he surprised me by saying he'd come with me. He said he wanted to support me and that he couldn't avoid Chloe forever if she was genuinely getting better. I asked him 3 times if he was sure, and he kept saying yes, so we drove to my parents' house together that Saturday evening. The dinner started awkward with everyone being super polite and careful about what they said. My dad asked Ryan about work, and Ryan gave short answers. My mom kept offering food to everyone even though our plates were full. Chloe sat across from me and kept her eyes mostly on her plate. About halfway through the meal, Chloe put down her fork and thanked everyone for not giving up on her. She apologized again for all the pain and embarrassment she'd caused, especially to Ryan and me. Her voice shook a little when she said it, and I could tell she meant it this time. Ryan nodded at her but didn't say anything back. He answered when she asked him to pass the salt, but he didn't try to make conversation with her. Chloe didn't push for more interaction or try to get his attention like she used to. She just accepted his distance and talked to my parents instead. It was the first time I'd seen her actually respect someone's boundaries instead of demanding attention. After we finished eating and my mom brought out dessert, Chloe asked if she could talk to me alone for a few minutes. I looked at Ryan and he nodded that it was okay, so I followed Chloe out to the back porch. She told me her therapist had helped her figure out that she was projecting her desire for a stable relationship onto Ryan. She said Ryan represented everything her ex wasn't, and that her brain had twisted his kindness into romantic interest because she desperately wanted someone reliable in her life. I listened without interrupting, and when she finished, I told her I appreciated her understanding what happened, but that rebuilding trust would take a long time. I said I needed to see consistent, appropriate behavior before I could really trust her again. She nodded and said she understood completely. She told me she wasn't expecting things to go back to normal quickly, and that she knew she'd damaged our relationship badly. It was the most realistic thing I'd heard her say in months, and it made me think maybe therapy was actually helping. Over the next few weeks, Chloe kept her distance and focused on her own life instead of mine. My mom told me Chloe had gotten a roommate to help with rent and expenses. Then she mentioned Chloe was dating someone new, and it seemed much healthier than her previous relationship. Chloe posted about her new boyfriend on Facebook, but the posts were normal and didn't have any of that weird intensity her posts about Ryan used to have. She talked about actual dates they went on and things they did together instead of making everything sound like some secret romance. 3 months after the Facebook incident, Ryan told me one morning that he was ready to be civil with Chloe at family events, but he said he'd never be comfortable helping her with things again, and that boundary was permanent. I told him that was completely fair, and that if Chloe needed help with anything in the future, I would handle it myself. He seemed relieved that I wasn't going to push him to go back to how things were before. I understood why he needed that boundary, and I was going to protect it no matter what. Isabella texted me saying she'd run into Chloe at a coffee shop downtown, and they'd had a totally normal conversation. She said Chloe had asked about her job and talked about her own work without any weirdness. Isabella told me Chloe had said she was grateful people were giving her a second chance, and that therapy had helped her understand herself better. It was good to hear that Chloe was having normal interactions with people again, instead of making everything weird and intense. My parents seemed so much more relaxed at the next family gathering. My mom wasn't tense and worried the whole time. My dad actually laughed at jokes instead of looking uncomfortable. But there was still this awareness underneath everything that our family had been through something big, and things would never be exactly the same as before. My dad pulled me aside before we left and told me he was proud of how I'd handled everything. He said I'd been firm about boundaries but also left room for Chloe to get help, and that took real strength. That night after we got home, Ryan told me he appreciated that I'd never doubted him through this whole mess. He said he knew it must have been hard to confront my own sister, but that I'd always had his back even when it got really uncomfortable. I told him that was what marriage meant to me, and that I'd always choose us over anyone else. We'd gotten closer through this experience because we'd had to communicate clearly and support each other through something incredibly weird and painful. He said dealing with Chloe's delusions had actually made him more confident in our relationship because he saw how we handled a crisis together. My mom called one evening to tell me Chloe had started volunteering at a crisis center downtown. Her therapist thought it would help her understand other people's struggles better, and get outside her own head. Chloe worked the phones twice a week, taking calls from people in bad situations and connecting them with resources. My mom said Chloe talked about the work with real focus and seemed to care about helping the callers find solutions. It was different from how she used to talk about things in her own life, where everything centered on her feelings and what she wanted. 3 weeks into the volunteering, Chloe told my mom about a caller who reminded her of herself after her breakup, and how she wished someone had pushed her to get help sooner instead of letting her spiral. My mom took that as a good sign that Chloe was actually learning something from therapy, instead of just going through the motions. I asked my mom if Chloe had mentioned Ryan or me lately, and she said no, that Chloe mostly talked about her job and her boyfriend and the crisis center. That felt like progress too, because for months, everything Chloe said somehow circled back to Ryan and their supposed connection. 4 months after the Facebook disaster, my parents hosted Thanksgiving dinner, and I didn't spend the whole day tense and waiting for Chloe to say something weird. She showed up with her boyfriend, and they sat together on the couch talking to my aunt about normal stuff like traffic and work schedules. When Ryan came in from helping my dad with something in the garage, Chloe said hi, and then went back to her conversation without watching him or making comments. I caught myself relaxing into the couch cushions and realizing I wasn't monitoring every word she said anymore. During dinner, Chloe asked Ryan to pass the rolls, and he did, and that was it. No loaded looks or comments about how he always helped her. My mom smiled at me from across the table, and I knew she was thinking the same thing I was, that maybe we were actually going to be okay as a family. After dinner, Chloe mentioned she got promoted at her new job to a team lead position, and everyone congratulated her. She seemed genuinely happy about it instead of using it as a way to get attention or make everything about her. Her boyfriend put his arm around her and she leaned into him naturally, the way people do when they're actually comfortable together. It hit me that this was what Chloe's relationship was supposed to look like, not the fantasy she'd built around my husband. On the drive home, Ryan told me he was proud of how our family handled everything without completely falling apart. He said a lot of families would have just stopped talking to each other or picked sides and stayed mad forever. I told him I was proud too, that we'd set hard boundaries when we needed to, but also left room for Chloe to actually fix things. My parents had backed us up when it mattered, and Chloe had done the real work of getting help instead of just apologizing and going back to the same patterns. Ryan reached over and squeezed my hand and said going through something this weird and painful together made him more sure about us than he'd ever been. I squeezed back and thought about how Chloe was doing well now with her job, and her boyfriend and her volunteering, how I had my sister back in a healthier version, and how Ryan and I came out of this whole mess stronger instead of broken.